Hello and welcome. This is Omar Torres, and you're listening to Pop Therapy, a podcast that explores the intersection between psychology and pop culture. There's so much to unpack, so join me and let's get started. Well, I knew you'd be back. I knew you'd come crawling back to this podcast. Hi, it's me, Omar, your friendly neighborhood therapist. I have been watching Euphoria. Duh, obviously. I feel like most people are. I do feel like most people are hate watching it at this point, though, but that's neither here nor there. That's just something that I'm observing. I do not feel compelled to talk about whether or not I think this season is good or bad, or whether the performances are good or bad, although I do think they're pretty good. But I'm not really here to comment on that. I did want to comment on a particular scene that took place. Oh, and if you haven't watched any of the episodes, spoiler alert, just a heads up, spoiler alert, I'm going to reveal some plot points. So in one of the episodes, I think it was the latest episode, Nate and Cassie have their wedding. And that's sort of like the event that the beginning of the season, at least, was like building up to, this big wedding that's supposed to happen. And there is an exchange between Hunter Schafer's character, Jules, and Nate's dad, Cal, played by Eric Dane, who sadly passed away earlier this year. So there's a particular scene between the two of them, Jules and Cal. Now, for a little bit of context, history, a reminder, Cal is a sexual predator. He is a sex offender. They make that very clear. And Cal had sex with Jules season 1 when Jules was a minor. Okay. So Cal is, again, a sexual predator. And what really kind of confused me, weirded me out, made me feel kind of gross, grossed me out, was that the exchange between them was relatively pleasant. Yes, it was a little uncomfortable. It was like a little awkward because of the whole sexual assault thing, but I don't know. It still felt relatively lighthearted, relatively pleasant. And I found myself asking myself, like, oh, why do I not like this scene? Why am I kind of grossed out by this scene? Why does this feel, I don't know, like unnecessary, or just like not, I don't know, just like missing the point, missing the mark, just way off. And I think it's because the scene feels like an abuser's fantasy. It feels like the scene was for the abuser, that he was centered here. It like lets him off the hook. You know what I mean? Like, here's a sexual predator who is having an exchange with one of his victims, and they're like kind of making jokes, and they're laughing a little bit, and maybe even flirting a little bit. I mean, am I crazy? It felt like they were flirting a little bit in that scene. And I was just like, oh, this is every abuser's fantasy, to abuse someone, to sexually assault someone, and then see them years later, and it's like, fine. And the person is fine. I mean, Jules looked gorgeous in the scene. I mean, she was wearing this beautiful dress, looked gorgeous, and was like laughing and smiling, and it just really, it lets Cal off the hook. It lets the abuser off the hook, is how it felt for me. Was that the intention? I have absolutely no idea. Is my media literacy maybe way off and I'm completely misreading the scene? I'm not sure, but I felt it necessary to share with y'all. I don't know. And if anyone else who watched that scene felt the same way, or if anyone wants to rewatch that scene through this particular lens, yeah, let me know. I might be crazy. I might be nuts. You know what I mean? I may have misread the entire thing, but it felt really, really strange to me for that reason. I will continue to watch, for better or for worse. There is no smooth segue to go from that scene in Euphoria that felt really like it was missing the mark to disordered eating, but here we are. And I was thinking about pop culture and its depictions of eating disorders. And I was trying to take kind of like an inventory, trying to take stock of what are the pieces of pop culture, whether it's media or whether it's, art or what have you, like what I was trying to take inventory, like what am I familiar with? What storylines, what pieces of art am I familiar with that talk about, that touch on eating disorders? And there were a few, I don't know if I would say that there were a ton of references that I had, but there were a few. And then I was thinking on it a little bit more, and I was trying to remember, what is my earliest memory of something in pop culture that touched on eating disorders? And it's so fascinating. My brain immediately remembered watching the HBO TV movie. And HBO, I thought it was Lifetime. I had to look it up, but the HBO TV movie, it is with Callista Flockhart. And it was in 1992, and it was called The Secret Life of Mary Margaret, Portrait of a Bulimic. And I remember, I don't remember many scenes. I remember a couple, but what I really instantly remember, I guess my body remembers the heaviness of that TV movie, just the panic and the deep sadness and the control, the need for control. And I think it was a good performance, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure, I think Callista Flockhart, maybe not regularly, but when that TV movie is brought up, I think she is talked about as having done a good job of portraying this character who is battling bulimia. And I started also just sort of then thinking about the fact that it's still, even me as a mental health professional, feel like there's so much that we don't know and understand about disordered eating. And so I am so happy to introduce my next guest to help us navigate this conversation. And it's going to be heavy, right? And so if you want to pause and maybe come back to this episode another day, by all means, check in with your own capacity, with your own bandwidth. If this is something you're up for listening to, again, there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, not today, and turning this off and doing something else. So please keep that in mind. Take care of yourself. But I am happy to introduce our next guest. I often introduce them by telling people, if I hadn't already worked with them, if I didn't already know them, this is who I would go to for therapy. It's very like Chappell Roan, when she used to say, I'm your favorite artist's favorite artist. It's very that, this is your favorite therapist. Please welcome into your hearts, my friend, my colleague, Cate Hickey. Hi.
Hi. Wow. I am often not speechless, but this is quite the intro.
I mean,
Hi,
I'm being totally earnest. That's 100. I don't know if I've said that to you, to your face, but that is often behind your back how I talk about you. I'm like, oh, if I didn't know Cate already, that is who my therapist would be. That is who I would go to for therapy.
Wow. Well, let me just sit up a little taller after that. I don't know.
Did
Live
you
up to the hype.
have you watched Euphoria by any chance? Are you watching it?
No, I would be hate watching it.
Yeah.
I hate watched the first couple episodes of the first season, and I
Uh-huh.
was like, this is just like trauma porn.
Yeah, I get
This is
that.
yeah, I'm surprised at the cult following of it because it's just so intense, but people love it. I think it's probably really cathartic to watch these things unfold.
Right.
But no, it's not for me.
Yeah, fair enough. And so in talking about this 1992 Callista Flockhart movie, did that ring any bells for you? Are you familiar with this TV movie this HBO TV movie that I'm referencing?
I think so. I think so, especially as you were describing a bit of it in detail. I can't pull it off the tip of my tongue, but I can so relate to the many portrayals of eating disorders in the media,
Yeah.
and they tend to be kind of a pretty specific portrayal. And this sounds like that movie fits that bill too. Like
Yeah.
thin, struggling, alone, white, and I'm
Yes.
presuming,
Yeah.
yeah, young woman.
When you think of the way eating disorders are portrayed in pop culture, what comes up for you? Do you think of pieces of media, or are there books that come up for you, or is it more clinical when you think about pop culture and eating disorders in general? What comes up for you? What comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like the clinical, of course, is there because I
Yeah.
know so much about it. And I think people are really fascinated by eating disorders and want to try to tell the story. And I think some people really try earnestly to do it. And there's just so much that you can't capture.
Hmm.
And I think more and more I'm seeing a little bit more trying to not to celebrate like, oh my God, look at how bulimic this person is,
Yeah.
but more of like trying to tell a story of like, what is it like to love your body, which is not eating
Mm,
disorder related, but I think is in response to people like the culture of being obsessed with like thinness, which we can get into for sure. Um, but yeah, my favorite like even conversations related to eating disorders and body is actually I really love that show Shrill on Hulu.
sure. Oh, with
Um,
80
the
Bryant?
SNL, yes, exactly,
Yes.
80 Bryant,
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
Um,
I loved that freaking show. Yeah, that was a
yeah.
great show.
Yeah, which is not really, I want to be really careful here. That's not a conversation about eating disorders, but
Right.
that's like a conversation of like fat positivity and and like welcoming all bodies and like letting
Right.
someone be the main character love interest. Yeah. And so it's again, it's not totally eating disorder related, but like that's more the content that I'm like happy to take in, like the other
Yeah.
side of it.
The other side of that conversation. I guess, I mean, it's probably wise slash fair for us to start with talking about what is disordered eating? What is an
Mm.
eating disorder? If you can talk a little bit about that, please, that would be great.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think an eating disorder is a clinical diagnosis, right?
Hmm.
People have disordered eating, people have difficulty with their body image. That doesn't mean that somebody has an eating disorder. An eating
Mm,
disorder is when somebody's relationship with food, their body image, and their relationship with like themselves really
hmm.
becomes so distorted that it's their function is impacted.
Right.
And with eating disorders, especially with anorexia and bulimia, it can really hurt your body.
Yeah.
I don't know if you might know this, Omar, because you're a clinician, but like a lot of people don't really know this, is that anorexia is the second most deadly mental health disorder in the DSM.
Wow. Yeah. I
Yeah,
knew it was up there. I did not know it was number two. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, second only to bipolar because
Ah,
you're really in the danger zone when you are very, very manic
right.
and especially transitioning from mania into from a depressive state into mania.
Hmm.
Anyway, that's that. But yeah, it can really, really hurt you. So that's kind of a long answer to your question of when somebody's relationship with food and their body becomes so unhealthy and
Yeah.
unstable that it impacts their functioning. And I can answer that in a more
Yeah. And
tight way if you
I
need.
just wanted to say thank you for drawing a distinction between an eating disorder as a clinical diagnosis and disordered eating, which
Yeah.
is not a clinical diagnosis, but certainly, I mean, I guess like something that's more not necessarily pathological, but like an issue. Is that how you would describe the two or
Yeah.
differentiate the two?
I mean, I think they both deserve a lot of like thoughtful care and attention and
Hmm.
consideration.
Hmm.
I make that distinction at the top because I don't want to pathologize people responding to very real social pressure.
Yeah.
And I think people
Mm,
can suddenly feel very defensive and very scared to talk about it. If we start to have a conversation about eating disorders and we mention things that many people do right now.
yeah. Yeah.
And that does not make an eating disorder, but I still think it's really worth having the conversation about body image and relationship with self, but also to say, like, it doesn't necessarily mean eating disorder,
Right.
but it also might.
And so, what are some myths and or misconceptions about
Mm.
eating disorders or disordered eating that you think a lot of people miss or don't understand? Are there things that come up in your own sessions with
Totally.
clients? Like what are some of those myths and misconceptions?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so many.
I bet.
The first couple that come to mind is that like only white women have eating disorders.
Yeah. Yeah.
That feels like a really big one,
Mm-hmm.
which I think has a lot to do with the like storytelling that's been done.
Mm,
And I think there are a lot of white women with eating disorders, don't get
of
me
course.
wrong. And the idea of like that's the only people who experience this, I think
Right.
is that. And I think related to that too is this idea that like men don't deal with eating disorders. I think
Mm-hmm.
the research is telling us more and more that men, in very growing, alarming numbers, are really dealing with this in a huge way.
Yeah.
And people don't even tend to look at it and think about it as an eating disorder. They might be like, oh, strange relationship with exercise, maybe some body dysmorphia, but the like noise, the food noise really like impacts a lot of men too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point that there's this gendered component that comes up a lot. This idea that men don't have eating disorders or that men don't struggle with their relationship to
Mhm.
food. Like, why? And I know you talked about this a little bit. You touched on the fact that the storytelling sort of has helped shape this idea that only women struggle with this. I'm wondering if you have any other ideas as to why it's so gendered, why people misunderstand that, why people think that it's only something women deal with.
I think the beauty standards for sure, where this expectation that women,
Mm,
when they are their most ideal and most beautiful, are thin.
yeah,
And men, when they are their most ideal and most beautiful, are fit and muscular and
yeah,
strong.
yeah,
And I mean, this is changing even now with this whole idea of looks maxing and
right.
clavicular
Oh
hammer
gosh.
face, whatever.
Yeah,
Like the men are really under scrutiny now.
yeah,
And I don't mean to even talk about this as men versus women. Obviously, people across all the gender
of
spectrums face
course.
this in their own way. But I think anyway, to tighten it up, the beauty standards of like women are thin and petite to be beautiful. And men, of course, have their own beauty standards, but not under so much scrutiny. The ideal isn't to be as small and dainty as possible.
Right, right. That's a really good point. Especially, I think the looks maxing. Every time I see something about that, or every time I am listening to someone who partakes in looks maxing, whatever that even means, I'm always like, oh, this sounds like an eating disorder, or this sounds like or at the very least, I'm like, oh, this sounds like disordered eating, or even like addiction. Like hearing some of these young men doing meth to stay thin, or to stay or
Mhm.
to help with weight management. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is, obviously I can't diagnose them from my phone screen, but this sounds like an eating disorder or like addiction. And I remember thinking like how much attention this is getting now. I'm kind of like of two minds about it. On one end, I'm like, okay, I'm glad this is getting attention. I'm glad like we're thinking about, oh my gosh, what is this all doing to like teenage boys? Like we never considered that before. Maybe we should consider that. Let's talk about it. On the other end, I'm kind of like, yeah, this is what gay men have been doing this since the dawn of time. Why does it matter now? So there's like a little bit of like resentment on my end, a little bit, you know.
Totally, totally fair. Yeah, I think it's affecting straight men now.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right.
And another thing I wanted to add on to about this idea of beauty standards in general is like it's white beauty
It's what?
standards.
Yeah, yeah,
And you'll see this now. I see it now, not you. Like I'm like the pursuit is like this like European
yeah.
male beauty standard. And for when I said before of like thinness as the beauty ideal, that's a very like white centric beauty
Right.
ideal because certainly like other cultures, folks of color, beauty is so vast and there's so many different ways to appreciate and like
Hmm.
express beauty, but for whatever reason we are obsessed with this like white standard,
With this like white
white possible standard.
Eurocentric, yeah, standard
Exactly.
of
Yeah.
beauty. Do
Yeah.
you, in your own work, do you notice eating disorders present differently amongst or throughout different populations, or does it show up? Is there a lot of overlap across genders, across socioeconomic statuses, or does it show up pretty consistently, fairly, for lack of a better word, like uniform? How do you see it presenting across different populations?
Yeah, oh my God, great question. Definitely not uniform.
Okay, yeah.
Um, I mean, you'll know this with your own clients, like every person is different and
Hmm.
everyone can, excuse me, like present, anxiety doesn't look the same in any person. And because eating disorders are so varied, like you can have someone who's doing a lot of restricting, you can have someone
Mm,
who's doing binging and purging, you can have someone who is like working out a ton and like letting themselves eat, but like really like working out and working out and working out to the point that it would still be considered like like
a deficit.
energy restrict, yeah,
Yeah,
deficit. Thank
yeah.
you. And I think people have different cultural backgrounds too. Like there's different pressures too to
Mm,
adhere to these body image standards, and so the stakes I think sometimes can feel higher for different types of folks
mm,
who are like using disordered eating or who are, relating to their bodies in this disordered way to try to fit in with white culture. Like
yeah.
I think about like folks of color trying to emulate like thinness in a way that their bodies just like aren't ever gonna look like
Hmm.
their genetics would limit this like ability to look super super thin, and it feels like
Right.
there's so much on the line trying
Mm.
to like look a certain way.
Yeah, I also am thinking of folks in entertainment when thinking about the stakes, and I'm thinking about like,
Hmm.
oh, I have worked with clients who are or grew up as like athletes and folks
Hmm.
in entertainment where the stakes feel very, very high for them.
Yeah.
Not just them, obviously, but that's like one, I guess, like subset of folks that I've worked with where it's felt again like so important, like so urgent
Yeah.
to maintain a certain physique or to maintain a certain like calorie diet or what have you.
Hmm.
And so for you, when you're talking about the stakes, can you talk a little bit more about what those stakes are and how they show up for different people a little bit more?
Yeah, I think like social acceptance,
Mm,
whether it's I'm going to Fire Island this summer and I want to be able to have my shirt off at tea with everybody
yeah.
else, and
Oh, yeah.
I will do anything to do that.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Or
You are like you're like, oh God, you're like speaking to my heart. And I'm just
sorry.
like, oh God, I know that voice. I'm intimately familiar with that voice. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so real because on one hand, like I want to say like, oh my gosh, it feels like the stakes are so high. How can we
Hmm.
help, take some of the urgency out? But the
Yeah.
reality is there is a social consequence for not embracing this that we can say and talk on this podcast. Like, yeah, it's really disordered, it's really concerning. But the reality is I think people still do aspire to it, even without realizing that they're glorifying it.
Right. And what fascinates me, what intrigues me is I have noticed a lot of individuals and even yeah, I'll stick with individuals. I won't say gay men specifically, but I do notice a lot of folks who know that what they're doing might be unsafe or unhealthy. Like there is an awareness like, yeah, I know this isn't quote unquote healthy or good for my body. And yet I understand the social benefits, that I understand like that there's social currency here. And so I'm still going to, despite knowing like, yep, being this restrictive is not good for my body, despite knowing that, I am still going to aspire, right? Because the social currency is like
Yeah.
intoxicating or valuable.
Yeah. And I think like the short-term sacrifice, short-term consequence for
Mm,
like medium-term benefit,
hmm.
I think that's like diet culture to a T, right? That's what we were telling
Totally.
young women and girls. Like, I don't know, Omar, if you were in this soup, but when I was growing up, the Special K diet was like a thing that women were really told was going to change their lives, which is if you replace 2 meals a day with one bowl, like a bowl of cereal, like a small bowl of cereal. So
Wow.
you skip breakfast and lunch, you have 2 bowls of Special K, you have one very low calorie, no carb dinner, the Special K diet. Like, do it for a short period of time, and then you'll have this benefit. And so this kind
And
of yo-yoing,
right.
that is diet culture because
Yeah.
you cannot sustain weight loss long term. Like your
Right.
body cannot sustain a calorie deficit. It just can't.
Yeah, it's also not what it was built to do. It wasn't built to sustain a calorie deficit forever, for months or years. How
Yeah.
do you help clients, and maybe there's multiple ways of doing this, or maybe we're all still trying to figure it out, but how do you help clients sort of like lower the stakes? Is that what some of the work is for you in helping
Hmm.
clients manage an eating disorder or disordered eating? Is a lot of the work about like, let's lower the stakes a little bit?
Yeah, totally. Let's lower the stakes and let's also try to understand together what else is driving this part of
Mm,
you.
mm,
Because we can look at like the external beauty standards all day long. And the reality is that 100% of us are exposed to these beauty standards, but
right.
100% of us do not have eating disorders.
Bingo.
And so there are always other ingredients in this soup that
Yeah.
set someone up to be like predisposed for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think helping people understand what that is can be really helpful because then someone understands like what is it within me instead of like diet culture, I can't help but be around it. I am like a victim to diet culture, which
Yeah.
we not to be dramatic, we all are.
Right. Right.
Um, but like what else is going on? What is it in your upbringing? What is it in your family history? What is it in your kind of system, in your other parts? So that's really the bulk of it, actually.
I like the idea of thinking the phrase you use, other ingredients in the soup. I like that. What are
Hmm.
some of the other ingredients in the soup besides culturally, right? What we're being exposed to. I think that's such a good point that is worth saying again, right? Like we are all exposed to these beauty standards. 100% of us are exposed to these expectations and these standards, but not 100% of us have an eating disorder or disordered eating. So what else is going on within said person or client that is that is presenting itself in this particular way, or that is activating them in a particular way? Could you talk a little bit more about what are some of the other ingredients you're finding?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, like symptoms of an eating disorder, symptoms of disordered eating also serve as um, an immediate point of access for emotion regulation.
Mm,
Like if someone is really
totally.
stressed out and they're feeling
Totally.
out of control or anxious or scared, people can turn to a workout, a binge, a purge, a food rule that can help things feel less overwhelming.
Yeah.
Um, and so to emotionally regulate, and I feel like we could talk for, 5 hours about all the ways that that can show up, but needing a way to emotionally regulate or not knowing other ways to emotionally regulate, people
Hmm.
can turn to like relationship with food and exercise as
Coping.
like one of the, yeah, coping, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Which I think, well, let me ask you, would it be fair to say that that is another sort of misunderstanding or myth about eating disorders? That it's emotional often or many times, it's about emotional regulation. It's not just I want to look a certain way, that it is many times actually about navigating anxiety or sadness or
Rage.
heaviness, rage. Oh my gosh, yeah, rage.
Hmm.
Is that
Yeah.
something that in your work that you notice a lot of people don't quite understand or haven't understood? Or is it, or do you think it's something that more and more people are getting or becoming like wise to?
Mm. I think people who live it know straight up
Yeah,
that that's
totally.
what's going on.
Totally. Right,
They
right.
know
Right.
that this is their number one coping skill.
Yeah, yeah.
I think culture writ large, I don't think so. I think
Same.
that's why there's often this focus of like thinness when we like talk about eating disorders. Even when you and I started this conversation, it's where we started.
Right.
Um, but yeah, no, I think the deeper internal voice of an eating disorder that relates to like coping mechanisms is like, I think that's the number one driver.
Not surprisingly, I'm a gay man, and conversations around body image and food do come up at some point with all of
Okay.
my gay male clients. What have those conversations been like for you in your practice with gay men specifically? I'm curious.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually sometimes like kind of tricky with
Yeah.
my gay male clients, my gay boys, because they are so success driven
Mm,
and they're often so
totally.
successful. Some of the most successful people I've ever worked with
Yeah.
are like my gay boys.
Yeah.
They're so hardworking, they're so dedicated, they're
Mm,
so used to working hard and making sacrifices for payoff and gain,
right.
which I think is patriarchy, I think is
Yep.
gender dynamics, I think is homophobia, where
Yep.
we need to kind of compensate and be like twice as good, three times as fast.
Right. Right.
And so getting in my experience, like getting like gay men to open up about this and like let themselves be vulnerable or acknowledge that this is actually really hard and painful.
Hmm.
It's tough. It's really,
Yeah.
really tough.
There's so much
But
tied to your point. There's so much tied to success
yes.
and let's be clear, this is not gay men don't have a monopoly on being driven and wanting success, and right, and but I can see very clearly in hearing you talk about it, I can see the connection between like, oh, this is a part of my success story, and
Yeah.
this is a skill, or like maybe even like a coping strategy, like being driven and working really hard. And so I'm going to apply that not just to
Hmm.
the work setting. I'm going to apply it to all these other areas in my life, like with
Yeah.
food. And I'm going to approach it. I'm going to approach it similarly with like the same kind of like strategy, and like you
Hmm.
said, you got to work 2 times as hard and be 3 times as fast. And it's like a similar skill that is maybe useful in other areas in their life
Hmm.
that they're applying to food. So when navigating that, how do you have that tricky conversation with them, right? Because I would imagine that on some level they might be thinking, is Cate telling me to fail at this? Is Cate telling me not to work hard, not to care about this? And
Mm.
I could imagine a little bit of maybe like defensiveness coming up, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Totally.
hey, I'm a hard worker. Don't take this away from me.
Yeah.
How do you help them kind of like land the plane softly, or how do you help them approach this softer?
Yeah. Yeah. Don't take this away from me is such a thing in eating disorder work.
Mm,
I feel like
mm,
I say that so often, like, I'm not going to take this away from you. Like,
yeah,
it's not like sometimes I wish I could, but
yeah,
I
yeah.
promise you, I will not take this away. You keep it as long as you need it. And then,
Wow, powerful.
yeah. And when, yeah, 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 yeah. But how do I help land the plane with some of my gay men specifically? Yeah. I mean, I do a lot of like empathizing. Like, it
Hmm.
makes so much sense that you have this really well developed muscle,
Hmm.
in meaning meant in all the ways possible, this really well developed muscle of strategy and success and game plan.
Hmm.
Look at how this has kept you safe at work, in your
Mm,
family system, with your
hmm.
friends.
Hmm.
And can we also look at how this might be hurting you when
Hmm.
this is the only muscle you have or the only tool you have in your toolkit?
Yeah. So getting them to talk a little bit more about how it's hurting them, how it's painful is
Hmm.
one of the ways in which you sort of help them approach this topic delicately. I would also
Hmm.
imagine that across all populations and across the gender spectrum, that telling any client, I am not here to take this away from you. You keep it as long as you need, must be, I mean, I would imagine it's like one of the first times, if not the first time, a client struggling with an eating disorder has heard that. What does that do to a client to hear that from you? How do they receive that?
Yeah, I think it can be really shocking because people,
Totally.
especially
Totally.
because I am an eating disorder specialist, when people come in to work with me, on some level, they're seeking me out for a reason.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's scary to imagine giving up this thing that you've like probably for so many people, it's their longest relationship,
Mm,
right? They've had this since puberty, if not
right.
before. And so I think it gives a little bit of control and power back to someone. Like,
Yeah.
you keep this as long as you need. I'm not going to force you. You get to decide. You're
Hmm.
in the driver's seat. Like that kind of messaging, not even messaging, because that seems like that's really what I mean. I really
Right.
want people to understand they get to be in charge. And I think it's a really necessary frame to work within because so often we turn to disordered eating when we don't feel in charge, when we feel
Hmm.
scared or we feel out of control. And so building that association of eating disorder treatment is you get to be in charge.
Yeah. I could also imagine, like to your point, because disordered eating and eating disorders can show up in as a response to feeling out of control or as a response to feeling dysfunction in one's life, to hear
Mm-hmm.
a specialist say, you are in the driver's seat, you
Mm-hmm.
are in control here, you decide,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Must feel scary, but also powerful at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I really
Mm-hmm.
appreciate that. I really appreciate that because it comes from a place of understanding how important this coping technique is, right? Like
Yeah.
you are not treating it like that's finger wagging, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
bad and we need to stop and this is really unhealthy. And you're coming from a place of, hey, like I get it. I understand that this is so important to you. I understand that it helps in a lot of ways. It helps you
Yeah.
deal with rage. It helps you deal with feeling out of control. It helps you deal with like fill in the blank, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it comes
Mm-hmm.
from that understanding, that awareness that this is like it's a tool, right? It's a coping technique, a strategy,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
again that there's utility in that. Maybe not necessarily,
Totally.
maybe not function, right? Like especially long term, it's not functional because you can't sustain that forever and ever and ever. But
Yeah.
there is utility in the strategy. Was that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I think you were really on to something before. Like, I think it absolutely is functional in
Mm,
in
mm,
so many ways. Like, being thin is functional.
mm.
Being extremely fat is functional.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
being
Super
in
muscular.
super muscular,
Yeah,
being
yeah.
emaciated, being,
Mm,
and there's this really like darker side to an eating disorder that's really hard to put into words, but like being able to prove to yourself that you are disciplined and like essentially like strong enough willed to destroy your own body, like
yeah.
that is very self-satisfying to someone who's very, very sick.
Totally. Totally. I guess it goes back to the like I can control this. Like I can really, I mean, even at the expense of my own life or health, I
Yeah.
can, it's almost like, I don't know if anyone's ever described it to you this way or if you've thought about it this way, but it's like I can beat genetics. Like I can beat nature. There's something
Hmm.
in hearing myself say that. There's something like, oh yeah, I can totally understand why that would be satisfying. Why it's like,
Hmm.
oh, not even genetics can
Hmm.
get me down. You know what I mean? Or not even
Yeah.
genetics
Yeah.
can beat me, quote unquote. And so I can see
Totally. Yeah.
how that would be so satisfying, especially for just to like
Sure.
draw
Yeah.
the
Bring it back.
yeah, just to draw the make the connection and like really reinforce the point you were making about success and
Yeah.
the importance of success and the importance of like proving
Hmm.
something. Maybe it's your worth or value or what have you. Like it all
Yeah.
feels connected.
Yeah.
Does this idea, this relationship to success, do you notice it across the gender spectrum, or do you notice it more acutely or intensely or obviously, explicitly with men and gay men?
Again, I think eating disorders and the pursuit of excellence go hand in hand. And
Totally.
so,
Pursuit of
like,
excellence. Yeah. 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 Okay.
yeah, so like for sure, gay men, and also like
Everybody.
everybody,
Totally.
like and I think also like like a sub specialty of mine is like gender expansive folks and eating disorders,
Mm-hmm.
because on one hand, when somebody transitioned, there is this intention to change your body in a
Mm,
very visible, observable way. There's a
mm-hmm.
really intense, strategic, sometimes route of like
Mm-hmm.
changing your body's shape and muscle and fat distribution that
Right.
is not disordered, and getting from A to B or A to Z or A to Q, like it's a lot more sticky.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. To put it mildly. Yeah. A lot more sticky.
for
Yeah.
sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
How does that work with gender expansive folks? How does your approach change or differ? Because it sounds like it has to, right? Like it sounds like if you want to be intentional and if you want to be understanding,
mhm.
that the approach does have to shift a little
Yeah.
bit more. Can you speak to how you shift the treatment a little bit?
Yeah, I think that the thing that it to me is the most interesting and the most like gratifying for me as a therapist is being able to like walk a path like shoulder to shoulder with somebody who is trans and help them understand that like as they move through their transition, like their external presentation is going to change, but their
Mm-hmm.
internal experience of themselves is going to change.
Mm,
And so if you are someone assigned male at birth and you have never been in the dressing room of the women's department in J.C. Penney, you haven't had that experience
yeah.
yet, and you're starting to,
Right.
and helping people start to understand what it is like to move like with a feminine mind, or move as a woman, or move as
Yeah.
someone who is neither man or woman,
Right.
and that relationship to self, and like, okay, how do you want to present yourself is so meaningful to
Mm,
let people really like understand what they want, not what they think they need to present to be likable,
mm,
but what do they want. um is really a huge piece of it, for my gender expansive
yeah.
folks.
Yeah. It sounds like across the board, a lot of the work is about helping them understand their relationship with themselves, right? Like
Hmm.
that at the core, it's almost
Totally.
like,
Yeah.
and this might be like, well, duh, Omar, but I think it's worth saying, but it almost sounds like couples therapy, but like with your body, or couples therapy, like with your relationship to success. Like it's like
Mm-hmm.
you are maybe repairing a relationship, or at least trying to repair a relationship between these
Hmm.
two entities, right? Like these two, like almost like factions at war or something like that. Is that how
Yeah,
it feels for you sometimes? Like that kind of repair work, that it's akin to couples therapy or similar to couples work?
for sure. Yeah, because it's a relationship with self. And so when you said couples work, I'm like, oh, totally. You're working on the relationship 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So relationship with self. And there's like a lot of really cool stuff in like DBT that's all about like, can you help people to hold two truths or hold two different
Yeah.
feelings?
Right.
Can you
Right.
be, yeah, can you be happy and, scared at the same time? Can you be
Yeah.
like angry and disappointed? And can you still love this person who disappointed you and made you angry? And then like handing them a mirror and being like, yeah, can you be angry and disappointed and have love for yourself?
Mm.
That
And
kind
for
of thing.
anyone that is unfamiliar, DBT is dialectical behavioral therapy. It's a therapeutic intervention that is like super. It's been shown to be like really, really helpful for a lot of folks, especially when in regards to holding multiple truths, conflicting truths at the
Hmm.
same time. And it sounds like in eating disordered work, that is also a lot of the conversation is around holding multiple truths at the same time as well.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
yes,
Absolutely.
one, for example, is like that I would imagine you said a million times, like, yeah, you do get more attention when your body looks a certain way. You're right. Like, you are
Hmm.
getting hit on more. More people are sliding into your DMs. You are getting asked that, like, yep, that's true, 100%. And this is hurting you.
Yeah, and like, what did you give up to get? What
Mm,
toll and tax did you pay to get that
right,
attention?
right.
Did you miss a birthday dinner? Did you miss a work promotion? Did you lose out on sleep? Did you feel really uncomfortable? Did your injury take longer to heal because you were
Mm,
malnourished? And just helping people understand, like, yeah, I really could get more attention if I look a certain way, and it will cost me.
and
This
it
is not
will.
free.
Yeah, yeah. How comfortable in your experience have folks been to talk about the cost? Do you find that to be particularly difficult, or are folks pretty game to have that conversation?
Mm. I feel like there are two camps of people who are so grateful and desperate to talk about it, and that when they finally get invited and have kind of like the red carpet rolled out for them to
Yeah.
discuss this,
Yeah.
people are so grateful to be like, "You're right. This is
Oh,
this is
I bet.
so hard."
Yeah.
And that is so like beautiful and heartbreaking to watch because it's like you see somebody who's been like suffocating and you like give them an oxygen mask and they're like, oh my God.
Right.
Um, and then I think there's another camp where people are really scared to admit how much they sacrifice for
Mm,
it. Because I think there's this fear of if I admit like how hard or how damaging this has been for me, I'm going to lose it. And if I lose it, I'm going to
mm.
lose everything that I associate with the achievement, or air quotes here on the
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah, yeah. The achievement, the success, the whatever they get from that experience, the part, whatever they whatever the benefit, yeah, the quote unquote benefits are, or whatever it is that they get from that they find helpful, they're afraid of losing that.
Hmm.
And so is a
Hmm.
lot of the work then after that or during helping them develop, like, okay, so there are some other ways that we can navigate anger. There are other coping strategies that we can
Absolutely.
use. And is that like a lot of
Absolutely.
the work, like helping them build like, pun intended, like another muscle, like we're gonna like help
Absolutely.
build this other muscle. And does
Yeah.
that also vary from client to client, like the different coping skill, or the different muscle, or yeah, I'll let you speak on that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like, yes, yes, and like
And
different clients need different tools.
hmm hmm
And there's often like just such a through line of like relationship with self
hmm
and like self acceptance and self love, which sounds like a
hmm
little bit cheesy, but like if we can kind of help somebody build up a more positive relationship with self,
hmm
so much of the other things can fall into place. Like,
yeah,
it's, being willing to invest and find another hobby, to spend a little bit of money on yourself, being willing to set a boundary with that friend who really takes from you emotionally and saying,
yeah,
I'm not actually willing to do that anymore,
yeah,
being willing to stand up for yourself at work, like that stuff becomes possible when you start to help someone build a better relationship with themselves.
yeah.
And that stuff is impossible if relationship with self is off.
Yeah, yeah. How do you define and talk about with clients this concept of self love? I feel like we hear it on social media, especially. We hear it so much,
Hmm.
and and on TV. You know what I mean? But like we hear that a lot. Self love. How do you define it, and how do you introduce the topic, and how do you talk about what is self love?
Yeah. Sometimes it's really like fun and easy to just like bring in a little bit of humor. Like
Yeah.
also we're talking about the queers, we're talking about the gays. And so I like thank God for RuPaul who has given us like the line,
Yeah.
the line.
Yeah.
And it's like a way to laugh about it and then be like, oh yeah, damn, like that's true. Like if you
Yeah.
can't love yourself, how in the hell are you gonna love anybody else? So it's like fun to start high level, like hee hee ha ha.
Yeah.
And and then also like, yeah, what would it look like? What would loving
Mm,
and then like to talk to people before there's any prescriptive change, what would it loving yourself look like?
hmm
What would it look like if you were 10% kinder to yourself,
hmm
hypothetically speaking?
Yeah.
And to
Like, of
start to
course,
help
hypothetically, we don't have to
for sure,
just
for
as a
sure.
a thought experiment. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and people will tell you it's incredible. Sometimes I'll ask clients that question and I'll think they'll say something like, well, it would mean standing up to my boss. Like I'll
Mm,
think they'll say something like that.
yeah.
And then they'll say something so fucking profound. I'm sorry. Can we say that on here?
Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. They'll say something so profound, like I would be kinder to myself.
Yeah.
Like I like wouldn't beat myself up for like I don't know, like skipping that extra rep at the gym. Like
Yeah.
something so small.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'm like, "Oh, right. You beat yourself up because you skip a rep at the gym. What's that
Right.
like to say out loud?" And
Right.
then you like slow everything down and it's just like, "Ooh, this is
Yeah.
so beautiful."
Oh man, Kate, you're doing God's work. God bless. Thank goodness for folks like you. So, Kate, there's this one question that I ask
Totally.
every single guest, which is,
Yeah.
what is one piece of advice or wisdom that you've gotten from the mental health world that you live and or swear by? So this can be something
hmm
you learned in your own therapy. This can be something you read in a book or heard on a podcast, anything like
Yeah.
that. But what is that one thing from the mental health world that you swear by?
100%. This is not necessarily eating disorder
Hmm.
specific, but it is a boundary is a bridge, not a wall.
Ooh, hell
And
yeah.
yeah,
Hell
yeah.
yeah.
And so like having boundaries doesn't isolate you and pull you away from people and goals. It is a path to get to more closeness and more safety with them.
Well said. A lot of folks tend to think of boundaries, and it's in the word boundary, right? And so I don't think it's by no means. It's not like it's our fault. I guess is what I'm trying to say, or rather, it's understandable why folks would hear the word boundary and think
hmm
this is a wall, this is something that
hmm
separates, this is a
hmm
fence, this is a right, like
hmm
this is something that is separating multiple things from one another. And so I don't think it's to no fault of our own. However, it is what it is in actuality is a bridge to closeness, right? And
Yeah.
so like how can we help you feel more connected and close and closer to your friends, to your community, to your partner? That is what a boundary actually is. And can you talk a little bit about the ingredients of a boundary? What does a really well constructed boundary look like?
Ooh, love this. I'm going to start with what a boundary is not
Hell yeah.
first, which is a
Hell yeah.
boundary. A boundary is not you dictate another person's behavior.
Right. That's right. Can you please say that one more time, Kate, for the cheap seats in the back? What? A boundary is not what?
5,000%. A boundary is not dictating somebody else's behavior.
Amen.
Yeah, I feel like I have had to do that so many times. Like, I need to hold your hand as I say this, but a boundary is not telling your mom that she can't call you anymore. That's not a
Right.
boundary. Um,
Right. Right.
mm-mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, anyway, I guess to kind of like turn that on its head, I think the ingredients of a good boundary are like understanding where your limit is, like
Right.
self understanding of like, ooh, I have overextended or I
Hmm.
am not getting my need met, an
Hmm.
understanding of like what someone needs,
Hmm.
and then an ability to like describe that to another person.
Yeah.
Like, I feel disrespected when you show up 20 minutes late every time I hang out with you.
Hmm.
Like being able to say like, I feel disrespected as
Hmm.
opposed to like, you're inconsiderate,
Right.
friend. Like being it like, own, I feel disrespected
Right.
or I feel frustrated, like owning that feeling and then being able to understand what you can do as the person who's setting the boundary, what you can
Mhm.
do to protect your energy.
Right.
Like if you show up 20 minutes late, I'm gonna leave after 10. I'm not
Right.
gonna wait 20 minutes.
Right.
Instead of saying to a friend, you can't show up late anymore. Like that's
Right.
not a boundary.
Right.
That's a criticism.
That's a criticism, or what I also tell clients is that might be an expectation.
Yeah, there
I'll
it is.
give you
That's what it
that,
is.
right?
You're right,
Like,
Omar.
fair enough. The expectation is that they show up on time. Fine. And
Mm-hmm.
expectations, we all have them, and fine. But to your point, it is not a boundary, because the focus on the main character of the boundary is you, right? And so it's like, oh, it's like
Yes.
you are responsible for your own behavior, and a boundary is a reflection of what that is going to look like, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
is why, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
trying to use a boundary to dictate someone else's behavior, then it's not a boundary anymore. It's now
Correct.
you are just trying to, maybe saying just trying to, but is unfair, but you are trying to control someone else's behavior. And that is
Mm-hmm.
a slippery, slippery slope, folks.
Yeah. Yeah, can feel so disempowering.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think boundaries really help to have people hold on to their power in a real way.
Well said. Thank you so much, Cate. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know how busy you are, so I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. Where can folks find you if they wanted to reach out and work with you, or if they just wanted to follow along on your journey of life? Where can folks find you or reach out to you?
People can find me like kind of like the usual therapy places. I'm
Mhm.
on Therapy Den, I'm on Psychology Today, and my website is catehickeytherapy.com.
Wonderful. Again,
Yeah.
thank you so, so much. As you know, I am a therapist. Cate is also a therapist, but this podcast is no substitute for good old fashioned therapy. So take what's useful, leave the rest, and don't forget, therapy makes you hotter. Bye.